After the Bulls won their 6th championship ring in 1998, the team imploded, due to turmoil between the general manager, the coaches, and the players. Most basketball fans know the details about why this team disbanded, and if you watched the Last Dance documentary that released a few years ago, then you certainly know all about it. But if you don't know the details, you can watch my summarized version with this video. Now, towards the end of that documentary, Michael Jordan talked about how frustrated he was that his Bulls didn't get a chance to win a 7th championship ring in 1999. Phil Jackson retired due to pressure from general manager Jerry Krause. Without Phil Jackson around, Jordan decided to retire from basketball. Without Jordan around, Bulls management determined that they couldn't compete for championships. So they traded Scottie Pippen and Steve Kerr, and they released Dennis Rodman. Jordan was convinced that if Phil Jackson hadn't been pushed out of his coaching position, that entire squad would have returned for a chance to compete for a 7th ring in 1999, and he believed they likely would have won another championship. But is he right? Would the Bulls have won a 4th straight title to close out their dynasty on an even more legendary note? Well, I actually believe this answer is a bit more complicated than people usually recognize. There's a lot of nuance to this hypothetical question, and although there is absolutely no way we can get a definitive answer to something that never happened, at the very least, I can make an educated guess based on the information in front of us. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing we have to do is look at the state of the Chicago Bulls team at the end of the 1998 season. We'll start with Michael Jordan. MJ was 35 years old and had just finished his 13th season in the NBA. Jordan would have turned 36 during the 1998 to 1999 regular season. Now, in those 98 finals against Utah, Jordan was extremely tired as he had just led the Bulls to their 3rd straight deep postseason run. Although MJ was quickly approaching his late 30s, he believed he was at his very peak of his basketball abilities, at least from the perspective of his basketball IQ, and in his ability to execute what he wanted. Regardless of the fact that it was his final season in Chicago, he was the league MVP, he was the league's leading scorer, he was first-team All-Defense, he was the All-Star Game MVP, and he was the Finals MVP. So in a sense, MJ might have been correct about this being his peak. Now, Michael Jordan was certainly exhausted at the end of these NBA Finals. But that wasn't just because he was much older at this point in his career, but it had a lot to do with the fact that he had to take on a greater load throughout that season than usual. Scottie Pippen was recovering from surgery throughout the 1998 regular season, which meant that Jordan had to play more minutes and utilize more energy in order to win 60 basketball games. In those NBA Finals, Scottie Pippen was dealing with back pain, which caused MJ to have to carry the Bulls team offensively to an even greater extent, as he averaged 33 of the Bulls' 88 points in that final series. So although MJ was understandably very exhausted, I don't see that as an indication that he didn't have much left in the tank for 1999, but rather I saw that as a symptom of his extremely unique situation throughout the 1998 regular season. In my opinion, Jordan would have been his usual dominant self in the 1999 season, and was certainly up to the task of winning a 7th ring. So now let's look at Scottie Pippen. Obviously, Scottie was mostly a shell of his usual self towards the end of the Bulls' championship run, as his brutal back pain caused him to act as a decoy in Game 6 of those NBA Finals. With that being said, Scottie's health recovered almost completely in time for the 1998-99 season. The biggest piece of evidence for that statement is the fact that Scottie didn't miss a single game for the Rockets throughout the entirety of his 98-99 season. But it is worth mentioning that Pippen looked as if he had lost a small step due to his increasing age, as he averaged nearly 5 points per game less with the Rockets, and his efficiency from the field took a bit of a dip as well. His Rockets only made it to the first round of the playoffs, where they were eliminated by Shaq and Kobe's Lakers. In that postseason, Scottie was quite inconsistent. For example, in Game 2, he completely disappeared, scoring only 3 points on 0 of 7 shooting in 37 minutes of action. But in the very next game, he put up a career performance, dropping 37 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists, while playing all 48 minutes in a blowout victory. So at the very least, Scottie was extremely streaky at this point in his career, but to a certain extent, that was always an aspect of his game throughout his playing days. In conclusion, Pippen would have definitely lost a step in 1999 and wouldn't have been as much of a sure thing as Michael Jordan. Now let's look at Dennis Rodman. Of the Bulls' three-headed monster, Rodman was the oldest player, and if the Bulls were to make it all the way to the NBA Finals in 1999, Rodman would have been 38 years old before that series even started. Generally speaking, players in the 90s didn't age as gracefully as they do today, especially a guy like Rodman who leaned heavily upon his strength, quickness, and athleticism. Of the three stars, his decline in basketball skills was certainly the most evident. Some people forget this, but he was losing some of his edge even in the 1998 postseason. In that final series against Utah, Rodman played more than 30 minutes in only 2 out of the 6 games. Along with that, in only 2 out of those 6 games did he reach double-digit rebounds. This decline was not only evident in his level of production, but it was also evident to Phil Jackson, which is why he was significantly decreasing his minutes. Just like Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman actually played in the 1998 to 1999 season for another team, as Dennis was a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. The thing is, it's really difficult to gauge what player Rodman would have been on the Bulls in 1999 based on what he was for the Lakers that season. To put it simply, Rodman's stint in Los Angeles was a nightmarish roller coaster. They won their first 10 games straight with Dennis in the purple and gold, but once he became a disruption in the locker room, things became dysfunctional soon after that. Rodman was saying that he needed vacation time in Vegas, while claiming that Kobe and Shaq were jealous of his luxurious lifestyle. Kobe and the rest of the organization were questioning his commitment to the team, and Shaq is on record for saying that Rodman was the worst teammate that he's ever had. After Rodman had missed yet another Lakers practice, LA's management became fed up with his antics, and released the star forward just as the playoffs were set to begin. Now here's the thing, Kurt Rambis was filling in as the Lakers' interim head coach, and was completely unqualified to handle all of these egos. With the psychologically brilliant Phil Jackson as the head coach, and with Michael Jordan and Scottie as familiar teammates, I don't see Rodman having these same issues with the Bulls in 1999. In conclusion, the Bulls would have had a productive Rodman in 1999, but he would have certainly been a significant step slower and less productive than the team was accustomed to. So now that we've looked at the Bulls' 3 stars, let's dive into the details of the 98 to 99 basketball season as a whole. What people often forget is that the 98 to 99 basketball season was a lockout-shortened season, where only 50 regular season games were played, compared to the usual 82. Now at first glance, you would think that a shortened season would actually work as an advantage to an older Chicago Bulls team, who could greatly benefit from more nights off. I honestly don't think that could be farther from the truth. The key detail here is that because of the lockout, regular season basketball games didn't start until February 5th, 1999, which is roughly 4 months later than when basketball season usually starts. Due to this, the NBA schedule was way more brutal than ever before, as each team had to play 50 games in just 90 days. Instead of just back-to-backs, in many cases, teams had to play games on 3 straight nights. This was a brutal schedule for everyone, but for a very old team like the Bulls, who had just played basketball for 3 long championship seasons, this highly condensed season would have been especially draining. Now before you completely write off the Bulls for the unfavorable schedule, consider this. The strength of the competition certainly wasn't as formidable in the Eastern Conference compared to years past. Patrick Ewing had an ongoing Achilles injury that forced him to sit out in the playoffs. Shaquille O'Neal had left Orlando for Los Angeles several years earlier, and the top-seeded Miami Heat were shockingly eliminated in the first round by the 8th-seeded New York Knicks. Eventually, it was that 8th-seeded Knicks who made it to the finals out of the East, even though they were without arguably their best player, Patrick Ewing. Simply put, the Eastern Conference was wide open for the Bulls' taking. And even if the Chicago group wasn't as good as any of their 6 previous championship teams, I still believe they would have been good enough to get through a relatively weak Eastern Conference on their way to the NBA Finals. The thing is, waiting for them in the finals would have been the extremely formidable San Antonio Spurs. Now, it is worth mentioning that the Spurs and Michael Jordan's Bulls faced off twice in the 1998 regular season, and although both games were very close, Chicago won both matchups. San Antonio was even better in 1999 though, as they had lost only one game throughout the Western Conference playoffs on their way to the finals. Along with that, San Antonio was extremely strong where the Bulls were weak, in the painted area. The Twin Tower combination of Tim Duncan and David Robinson would have had the size to give the Bulls nightmares. And if it wasn't the 6'7" Rodman trying to slow them down, it would have been some big like Bill Wennington, who would be on his knees praying for mercy. San Antonio was also the #1 ranked defense throughout the 1999 season, and by no small margin either, as they were consistently allowing the fewest points in the paint. I understand Jordan never lost in the NBA Finals before, but this would have been his greatest test yet, as Rodman was on reduced minutes, and an already tired Bulls team had just got through the most grueling schedule they've ever experienced. When you consider how Pippen lost a step, Rodman lost a step, and the favorable matchups in the paint for San Antonio, I see the Spurs winning this series in 6 or 7 games. Now again, it's Michael Jordan in the finals, so maybe he ultimately finds a way to get it done. I think it's unlikely, but who knows? Maybe someone would have personally offended him before the series, in which case all bets would be off. So what do you guys think? How would the 1999 season have played out if the Bulls returned for a shot at a 7th ring? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.